Firearms Friday, and I already see people watching on the wrong platform. Striker, Guten Morgen. Fish and Golf's got the first blood. Trish is with us. Good morning, Trish. Striker says, Guten Morgen. Guten Morgen, wie geht's? Sehr gut. Wie geht's es Ihnen? Sehr gut auch, danke. Cam says, sup? Good morning, Patrick. All right. So, this morning, I want to tell you about how much I hate Colion Noir. Y'all know Colion Noir? Black guy, does Second Amendment advocacy stuff, and I just hate him. Let me tell you why. Because the son of a bitch beat me to this idea. He did this, and I realized, holy shit, this was a great idea. I wish I'd have thought about it first, and damn it, he beat me to it. So, obviously, I'm a little tongue-in-cheek. I'm actually a big fan of Colion's work. Great channel. Great Second Amendment. Great gun stuff. He does an excellent job of 2A advocacy for the 2A community generally. And what he's done that I thought was really clever is he stole some material from Dave Chappelle. Now, again, tongue-in-cheek, he didn't really steal it. The fair use for copyright's a funny thing. You haven't actually broken a copyright law until a judge says you have, right? Copyright claims are very different to all other, legal problems in that you can do what might be a violation of copyright, and unless the copyright holder comes and tries to hold you accountable, you haven't technically done anything wrong. Liberty Girl says, can we get a link, please? I did leave a link to the video that we're about to talk about in the chat, or I'm sorry, in the description. But there's the link in the live chat as well. Should be populating on your various screens. So anyway, with copyright, there are a few different things that say it's okay if you do X, Y, and Z. And that's what's called fair use. So you can use anybody's material under certain conditions. And this one in particular is on it is transformative, and he adds the commentary to make so that it qualifies as educational and qualifies as critique. And it's transformative because the final product, while it includes the original material, is substantially different to the original material. So if you guys are, I hope you guys are all familiar with this because it's one of my favorite stand-up bits. This is Dave Chappelle, and this stand-up bit is just one of my favorites. He's talking about having a gun. This is 7 minutes 53 seconds. So this is an 8-minute video. We're not going to sit here and watch the whole video. I just want to show you what Colin did here, and you guys should go check this out. If you're not familiar with this bit from Dave Chappelle, it like I said, it really is one of my favorites, and the bit itself is worth watching on its own. But the link in the description down there is for this video, which is Colion talking about the kind of the Second Amendment messages and interest that we can take from it.
I hate guns, personally.
All right, so recently I came across this clip from a Dave Chappelle stand-up. I don't really know how I missed this, but David humorously narrates his experience of buying a gun for the first time, and importantly, why he decided to buy that gun. Now, though he was joking in many ways, I believe he's being truthful, making one of the greatest arguments for the Second Amendment I've ever heard, honestly. Not because it's eloquent or groundbreaking, but because the comedic nature disarms people's preconceived notions, allowing them to see the importance of firearm ownership from a relatable perspective without personally experiencing the vulnerability in and of itself at that time. Now, let's dive into this brilliant clip, and I'll highlight the key moments.
And that's exactly what he does. He goes on to play the clip, and he stops it. He stops it at the various key moments, and goes into detail about, like he just did on that explainer, which is, excellent professional analysis. And I really enjoyed the video. So you guys should go and check that out. I thought that'd be worth touching on. This beautiful, and I do mean beautiful. I mean, have you looked outside? It's gorgeous out there. Firearms Friday morning. One of my favorite moments in the stand-up bit is Dave talks about getting to Kmart and telling the guy I need a gun, and he hands him a shotgun, and then he puts 2 boxes of ammunition up there on the counter, and he says, "Well, what do you want?" "I don't know. What's the difference?" He says, "What, this one with the duck on it? This is birdshot. Now, that won't kill a man." They're both excellent clips. You should definitely go and check them out. So, now this morning, I don't have a whole lot of, there's not a whole lot of new developments in gun news this morning. We've seen a lot of movement the last several weeks on some Supreme Court stuff on the OBBB, the OBBB, the One Big Beautiful Bill, with the Hearing Protection Act and the Short Barrel Rifle Act. But just this past week, we've already covered all that. Just this past week, there hadn't been a lot of movement on any of that stuff. So we're back to just some basic, good old fashioned brush fire mind. Firearms Friday, DGUs, baby, defensive gun use. And as many of you who have been watching the show for a while can recall, we used to have the splash graphics and the badges and awards for the DRTs and the DOTs and the BRMs. And the reason we're not doing those anymore is because we've gone so full boat in with Rumble. And so we're using the Rumble Studio instead of the old production studio software that we're using before, which is OBS, Open Broadcasting Software, which is great software. And frankly, I'd prefer to be using that to this more generic Rumble Studio software, which is efficient, it's functional, it works, it does the job. But one of the, and I say all this not to criticize Rumble Studio, they've been doing a great job of getting this whole thing kicked off and running. But they have now made available RTMPS infrastructure. So we're going to be able to start doing the OBS stuff soon. The thing that's holding us back right now is we need, for the way that this show is formatted, we have to be able to schedule the show, at least 10 or 15 minutes, preferably a half an hour or more in advance, and then pump it into there. There's some behind the scenes technical stuff that we're still working out. But for now, we can at least cover some DGUs. So, Louisiana man shoots coworker in self-defense after coworker repeatedly strikes him in the head. Whew. Okay, so for those of you, I see a few names. For those of you who are joining us for the first time on a Firearms Friday, here's kind of just a little primer. To the greatest of our capacity, what we try to do for these is to have them prepared ahead of time, where myself or whoever's on as a co-host, when we have those, if it's Mario or Cameron or whoever's doing the co-host, the second chair, we try to not read past the headline. I just want to know that it's a DGU so that I'm reading the article to you and I'm seeing the material for the first time. That way we get to crack some jokes and have some laughs. Because for me personally, there are a few things in this world that are funnier than watching bad guys get what's coming to them. It does something to my fuzzy, right? So, Louisiana man shoots coworker in self-defense after coworker repeatedly strikes him in the head. I gotta say, I'm already on the shooter's side here. Keithville, Louisiana, a workplace dispute turned violent Friday morning in Caddo Parish. And I apologize for not being Cajun enough to read Caddo Parish, however it is that those gator chewers say it, leading to a justified self-defense shooting according to local authorities. Okay, justified shooting according to local authorities. We are talking about Louisiana, and apparently we're talking about one of the parishes where they talk about gumbo and they chew on alligators. And I tell you something, down there in the bayou, the way the police tend to think about things is if they hear about it, they didn't want to. They didn't want to hear about it, right? So if a Louisiana cop says it was a justified shooting, what he really means is it was a shooting. And, well, Your Honor, he just needed killing is a valid legal defense. So around 11 a.m. on June 27th, deputies from the Caddo Parish Sheriff's Office responded to reports of a shooting in the 3200 block of Stagecoach Road. Upon arrival, deputies learned that 37-year-old Joseph Whitaker had been shot in the upper body following an altercation with a coworker. According to investigators, the incident began as a verbal disagreement between the two men. The shooter, whose name has not been released, attempted to de-escalate the situation. Wait a minute, I thought it said... Okay, so Whitaker was the shot. He was the shootee. So according to investigators, the shooter, whose name has not been released, attempted to de-escalate the situation and avoid confrontation by entering his truck to leave. However, Whitaker reportedly followed him to the vehicle and began striking him in the head. In response to the unprovoked physical assault and fearing for his life, the man drew his firearm and fired 2 rounds at Whitaker, striking him. Whitaker was transported by private vehicle to Willis Knighting South in Shreveport and later transported to Oxford LSU Health for treatment of non-life-threatening injuries. Okay, so Whitaker didn't die. The shooter left the scene immediately after the incident, but returned shortly after when deputies arrived. Following an investigation, authorities determined the man acted in lawful self-defense. Whitaker was later issued a summons for simple battery. This case highlights the critical importance of attempting to de-escalate volatile situations. Yeah, sure it does. That's a hell of a thing when you get yourself shot by being a dickhead and still get charged for being a dickhead. That's not one of our funnier cases. It wasn't the meth addict swimming through alligator infested waters and then attacking police officers through a wall of tasers, but it was still solid. Okay. But we didn't get a DOT or a DRT. We got a BRM on that one. That's so now in fairness, not every defensive gun use needs to be a fatality. And in a case like that, okay, simple battery argument, that's not one where excuse me. That is not a situation where I would say that a man needed to lose his life. Many times we'll see more dramatic stories, more substantial stories where the criminal is actually victimizing someone. See, in that case, we're talking about a dispute between 2 grown men, and one of them took it too far. And when he decided to F around about it, he found something out. And what he found out is, sometimes you can't tell if a man is wearing a gun and prepared for your nonsense. And he learned that lesson. But this is not a story where you've got some monster coming up on a young mother and her 6-month-old baby with a gun and trying to steal her purse. We've seen those too. We've seen those stories as well. And in a story like that, yeah, I want to see the bad guy take a dirt nap. If a bad guy, especially one with a weapon, makes a young mother go full mama bear and draw the little 9mm out of the diaper bag, then yes, I want to see her spend $150 on ammunition to save the taxpayers several $100,000, if not $1 million, on the wasteful incarceration of that useless piece of shit. Right? You got the proletariat is a word that comes from Latin, reference to the lowest rung on the Roman hierarchy, and they are those whose only contribution to society is the production of their own children. Right? They have no value except that they produce Roman citizens by having children. You talk about somebody like the shithead that tries to rob a young mother with her child and takes that dirt nap. He is beneath the proletariat. He is lower than a prole. He is not even a useless eater. He is a pure parasite. And Alex says, when I'm teaching, I never use the phrase center mass, because what is center mass? I teach people to shoot what they can see. Center mass is pretty self-explanatory. What I can see and what the center of what I can see are two different things. If the target that's presented to me is not the entirety of the target, if the target that's presented to me is not the entirety of the opponent, of the enemy, right, then what I'm going to be firing at is the center mass of that target. If I'm using a vehicle for cover and all I can see is your ankles, then suddenly they become center. Yeah, correct. You fire at the center mass of the available target. You don't fire at the extreme outside corner of the available target. I mean, in a perfect world where you're facing off against somebody who's standing up straight, maybe also armed. I mean, center mass is, you got all this to work with, shoot in the middle of it. Aim small, miss small. Right? Nice and easy. So, moving on. Armed camper defends himself after intoxicated man aims rifle during dispute over driving while drunk. After driving while drunk. So, Black Beach, Wyoming? Are there beaches in Wyoming? A late night camping trip turned violent on July 5th when an attempt to stop an intoxicated man from driving ended in gunfire, leaving 2 people injured at a remote site between Black Beach and Cottonwood campgrounds in Natrona County. According to the Natrona County Sheriff's Office, deputies responded to reports of shots fired around 10:30 p.m. Upon arrival, they found that a group of campers had tried to intervene when one of their companions, who was visibly intoxicated, attempted to leave the area by vehicle. As tensions escalated, the intoxicated man retrieved a rifle and pointed at another camper. That individual, fearing for his life, drew a handgun and fired in self-defense. Whoops. Okay, Alex says, okay, I'll pull back and I'll go to this. Alex says, you'd be surprised how many people in class would reposition to see what they perceive as center mass, i.e. the chest. Yeah, that... I'd have to see the tactical peculiarities of a situation before I made that decision. If I'm trying to deal with a target who's using a vehicle for cover, all I can see is his ankles. That will be my target. But if I'm already drawn down on him, and he's trying to hold position, he's trying to hold cover, behind a solid object. I mean, it's different in a domestic situation. If I'm in combat, then I'm going to use covering fire. I'm going to get up and move to vector around and get a better position to guarantee that I'm going to achieve a solid fatality here. So I'll use a little covering fire, put a couple rounds in the vehicle, get up and move, right? You know that the kind of death flower, and track around to get a better shot, firing just taking occasional pot shots, basically. But that's in a wartime tactical application. It's a little different in a domestic situation, but if you've gotten to either or both sides in the gunfight taking cover domestically, right? You know, assume somehow that's a situation you found yourself in through the actions of a lawful defensive gun use situation. So you got a bad guy draws on you, makes demands, you draw your weapon in self-defense, and he takes cover behind a vehicle. I'd have to think about that. There are a lot of, I mean, I know how to handle it tactically, just like I said, you know, occasional cover fire, and you know, but in this situation, you're armed with a pistol where you've got 5, 6, 9 rounds. You're not working with a 30-round magazine and a full basic combat battle load of 210 additional rounds. That's a little different. And I'd have some questions about the legality of engaging tactical suppression on a covered target in a domestic self-defense situation. Now, if the target is continuing to return fire, I think that's pretty cut and dry. If you've got a clearly initiated crime, and your legal argument is, you know, Your Honor, homeboy put me in a position where I had the reasonable suspicion that my life was contingent on his dying. Right? He put me in a position where I could not reasonably expect that there was a scenario where we both got to live, and I chose myself. So that's shit, man. I ought to have you on and we just have that conversation on air sometime. Not this morning. I got to get going in a minute here, but that'd be a fun one to talk about. And you know, on a mildly related note, Alex, we just need to get together and do some videos, brother. I mean, just generally. We haven't done a crossover in a hot minute, but you know, you're always welcome. But let me move on. We're going to wrap this one up, and then I'm going to get you a safety brief and get out of here because I gotta go shoot some houses today. As tensions escalated, the intoxicated man retrieved a rifle and pointed at another camper. That individual, fearing for his life, drew a handgun and fired in self-defense. The shot struck the man with the rifle in the leg. A woman standing nearby was also hit in the leg by a single round, possibly as a result of crossfire or an errant bullet. Cam says, damn, someone has a rifle and you still managed to hit him with your pistol? Alcohol better be involved. That's that BRM, baby. That's what we're talking about there. TPS report. Alex says, obviously the likelihood of being in that situation is slim. However, and in fairness, the likelihood of finding yourself in a real armed self-defense situation is pretty slim, in theory. Now, we've talked about the statistics many times on the show before. According to the CDC, somewhere between 2 and 4 million instances of armed self-defense, preventing crime, saving lives, are recorded annually. So and it's a tricky number. It's a tricky number to nail down exactly. Because here's a good example that I had up. This is something I want to discuss a little bit this morning. So here's a great opportunity to look at it. Mr. Guns and Gear shared this video.
What? You better quit, bro. Quit, bro. Quit. I'll beat your bitch head.
I will fucking shoot you.
I'm 6, 7 years old.
I don't give a fuck. Right. Yeah, that's right.
Let's see what happened to you.
Motherfucker.
I got your ass.
What's up?
Damn.
Walk the fuck out of my shit, bro. All the way out. All the fuck.
And that right there, let me pull out of this one. So Washington gun law, right? Attorneys that talk about gun laws say, right? I just told you about the statistics from CDC, somewhere between 2 and 4 million defensive gun uses per year. But Washington gun law points out, did you know that this will not make the stats of a defensive gun use of a firearm in self-defense? Because the CDC only counts incidents in which a firearm was actually discharged. Now, those numbers, there's some numbers there that are worth talking about. How often is a crime stopped by the presentation of a firearm without the discharge of that firearm? And that's a number that we just don't know. But it's hard to imagine, given the CDC numbers, that, let's see. Oh, that's back to the vehicle conversation. I'm gonna skip over that, Alex, just so I can stay on this train of thought. The CDC tells us, that there's this broad category, this broad number of people who had used a firearm in lawful self-defense, and it's somewhere between 2 and 4 million per year. And that number does not include the presentation of a firearm, which is a very interesting and important thing to understand, because in many cases, presenting the firearm in order to discourage a criminal from engaging in the activity that they were planning on can get you charged with brandishing. You have to be very careful about that. Now, and there's another big reason that the number of defensive uses of firearms without discharging firearms is not tracked by the CDC, and that's because you don't report it. For one, like I said, if you present your firearm in order to discourage a criminal from victimizing you, you do run the risk of being charged with brandishing, of being charged with a crime by the police. But let's say everything goes as well as it could. There's still a high likelihood that your firearm will be confiscated by the police for evidence, in which case you might as well just go ahead and budget for another firearm. Just go buy another gun. Or do the smart thing and have a few extras on hand. Yeah. Quite simply, people don't call the cops to report that a crime almost occurred because, let's be real, cops are a pain in the ass. On your best day as a perfectly law-abiding citizen, there is not a circumstance under which you're going to have an interaction with a police officer that is not a massive inconvenience, at a minimum, unless they're doing some kind of volunteer, free donuts for the kiddies, here's a sticker type of thing. Right? Yeah. A cop is not going to walk up to you and strike up a conversation to be friendly. He'll do a thing that kind of looks like that. But if you ever think a cop is just being friendly, he's lying. And, it doesn't matter if the things that I've just said are true. The fact is, people believe that. People believe that you cannot have an interaction with a police officer without being a total pain in the ass. And so they're not going to report, somebody tried to rob me, but it's cool. I showed him my 9 and he ran down the line. Well, yeah, you're going to keep that shit to yourself. You might brag about it to your buddies. This dumbass thought he was going to come get my wallet. And I was all like, what? And he ran off because you don't mess with me. Okay, yeah. You might go brag to your buddies and run your mouth, but you didn't call the police to report that crime. It does not make it into the statistics. So the actual numbers on defensive gun use may be double what the CDC reports is on the outside. Liberty Girl asks, do you ever get your gun back? It can happen. There is a process, and they are supposed to return your firearm because it is your property. But largely, if the police ever take possession of your firearm, here's a good example. We had a good buddy several years ago. Somebody broke into his car, and it's been a while. I don't remember exactly how it went down, but I think it was somebody broke into his car and stole like some cash out of the center console, a pack of cigarettes, stuff they could see. They kind of smash and grab, stole some stuff out of the center, and ran off. And he had a gun in his glove box, which the car thief did not find. So his gun did not get stolen. He called the cops to report the robbery. Cops came, did their investigation, and as part of their investigation, they searched his car. They found his gun, and they logged it into evidence. Right? Follow me, right? The gun, he legally owned the gun. When the cops got there, it was in the glove box of the car. He had not touched it since before. Basically, he left his house that morning. And when he got to work, he worked at a shitty place where they don't let you wear a gun while you're at work. So he stuck his gun in the glove box and locked it up, right? And when the cops got there and searched his car, they found the gun and they confiscated it. They logged it into evidence. And I want to say it took him 6.5 years to get it back. He did get the gun back, but it was 6.5 years later. Now, the gun was completely unrelated to the crime, apart from it's just happening. It was as related to the crime as any firearm worn by any of the police officers who were investigating that crime. It was an absolute shit show for them to confiscate that firearm. Absolute shit show. They kept it for 6.5 years. It's been a while since my buddy told me about that. So I don't remember the details in particular, but that's the basic thread there is the firearm was not involved in the crime other than it being, tangentially adjacent to the activity. And so they took it and he didn't get it back forever. Liberty Girl says, dang, I need a cheap gun. No, you just need two. You just go ahead and buy 2 good ones. And, don't talk to cops. Okay, guys, it is after 8 o'clock. I need to go ahead and put a pin in this one. I thank you so much for watching this morning. It is It is Friday. There's I don't think there's anything special going on this weekend that I can think of. 4th of July is over. It's kind of a mellow weekend coming up. So wear sunscreen. Don't turn the radio up too loud. Don't drive drunk. Don't fry bacon naked. Y'all be safe out there. We love you, and we will see you. Tomorrow night. We got a special tomorrow night, right? Because it's Saturday night at 2100. Y'all tune in, and we'll do them deep dives. So y'all be safe. Love you.